Welcome to another episode of the MMA Lock-Cast. I'm your host, Manpreet, aka MMA Lock of the Night, and your boy on Twitter at MMA LOTN. This week we're going over UFC 243, which is headlined by a huge middleweight fight between Robert Whittaker and Israel Adesanya, a fight that a lot of people have been waiting for a long time. We knew as soon as Adesanya got his first victory in the UFC that he was kind of projected to get to this spot, but to go up against another guy from Australia and that New Zealand region, it's even bigger, and it's fucking amazing for them that they can go out there and try to fill out an arena or a stadium, I should say. But who knows how those ticket sales are doing, to be honest. In the co-main event, we got Iaquinta against Daniel Hooker. Don't know if I really give a fuck about that fight, to be honest, but we'll get into that later in the episode. Also, this episode, I will be joined by a very special guest to break down one of the upcoming fights. The last two guests, they chose to go with the main event. My next guest chose to pick one of their earlier fights a little bit before the main event, and I can't blame him. You know, we're going to have some nerds on this fucking podcast. He's one of them. I am one of them. Most of you watching this are probably one of them, or are just trying to get in and out quick, get your fucking information that you need and get the fuck out of here. I get it. But I'm excited to get into this fight with my man because I have a lot of good thoughts on it, and I'm sure he does as well, because I believe he has a bet on it, if I'm not mistaken. Regardless, we're not doing the casuals today. We got to get to my man. That's going to be my guest. So I want to speed things up a little bit. But there are some fights on the prelims that I'm very much looking forward to. I may have potential plays on. But just on, going through the odds, it might be a lighter card for me in general. I got to pick my shots a little bit better. I've been going with a little bit more volume recently. My dogs have been hitting, but the lock and the night plays are really shit in the bed. So I got to turn things around. I got to really hone in on something, and I think I have one line in mind. That hasn't been released yet, but I think will be the lock of the night play. And kind of going off of one of the listener questions that I answered last week, my threshold is minus 350, so we'll see where this bet comes in, and I'll let you guys know. But let's get started on the card. Or actually, you know what? Let's go over UFC Fight Night 160, UFC Copenhagen that went down this past weekend. Since we're talking about my bets anyway, it ended up being a 2-event weekend for me as well with Bellator mixed in there. But let's go over this real quick. My first play for UFC Copenhagen was under 2.5 at plus 150 for the Ismail Nadia fight and the Sierra Bahadurzada fight. I thought, with the styles of both of these guys, maybe Ismail playing a little bit safer, which is what he did. I thought there were many instances where this fight could have been stopped, given some of the scenarios I expected to play out in my head, just based off the type of striker both of these guys are. So, yeah, Nordiev is a little bit, more so on the conservative side. But I think that CR, throwing those haymakers as he does, he leaves himself for openings, and that's where I think that he possibly could get caught down the road. Dude hasn't really been finished, so I understand if, why the odds are always so close, or even plus money to get the under on Sierra Bahadurzada fights. But I like the spot. I wanted to take the shot. Only regret was probably going as deep as I did with the 1.5 units. Next up, we had Iaquinta to win inside the distance, plus 160 on that. I was more than happy to take that underdog shot or that plus money shot on a guy who has knockout power and against a guy who has still a sketchy chin. Even though he looked really good in his last fight, that's not going to help his chin. And I think that Iaquinta was going to be the guy that was going to find the button. He went for the takedowns and he got it that way, but it's still a victory. I had 0.75 units at plus 160, profited from 1.2 units, so I was happy with that one. Next up was a heavy play on or a heavy-ish play on Maki 2.5 units at minus 162, I believe it was, or minus 152 against Lando Venata. He looked great. I knew as soon as he implemented his calf kicks, it's going to have a mark on the fight immediately, and they kind of did against Lando Venata. Mad at myself I didn't go a little bit deeper at that, but again, I say that after every time I win a fucking bet, especially if it's not a lock of the night play. So big win for Mullarkey there. He's going to be a lot of trouble for a lot of guys who are not able to find an answer for that calf kick. Otherwise, he's going to implement that early and often, and it's going to be showing dividends come the 15th minute of the fight. All right, next up, I had an underdog play, 1 unit at plus 138 on Nicholas Dalby. I'll take it as a little bit of a gift. That stand-up that they had, I believe it was in the second round, where, second or third round, where Nicholas Dalby, was on his back. Referee stood it up when Alex Oliveira was in half guard. I'd be a little bit upset as well, as clearly Oliveira was, after the guy actually got stood up. And then, soon after, Nicholas Dalby gets his own takedown and rides out the rest of the round, and in my opinion, wins that round as well. So I'll take the gift. Underdog shot on Nicholas Dalby. Alex Oliveira, once again, kind of shows his lack of gas tank. He was there in the third round, but, it really was the detriment of him. So if you can get somebody that has a better gas tank and doesn't have a glass chin, I think you have a good shot of beating Alex Oliveira anytime. So big win for Nicholas Dalby there. We'll see where it takes him. And then lastly, we have my lock of the night play, which was Michal Oleksiejczuk against Ovince St. Preux. 5 units at -224. I'd take that bet 10 times out of 10. That first round went exactly how you thought. Michal has never really shown that crazy of a power dump or his adrenaline dump as he did in that second round. Then Ovince St. Preux, took advantage of that, imposes well on the ground, and got the easy sub via Von Preux choke. So big win, and shout out to anybody that took the shot on the OSP. But not a lot of people expected Michal to be taking an L that night. Unfortunately, he did. So I ended that event -2.28 events. Continues the tough stretch of Lock of the Night plays, or Fate of the Night plays, essentially now. If you guys want to call it that, I don't give a fuck. But, I'm going to keep chugging along. Later that night, we actually had Bellator 228 as well, where I had a 1.25 unit bet on Juan Archuleta against Patricio Pitbull. Pitbull fought a great fight, even though he wasn't the most active in that. He was landing the better shots. He was obviously causing the more damage. So big win for Patricio there. And then we have my lock of the night play, 5 units at -269. Juicy as fuck, but I thought it was more, it was definitely called for Gegard Mousasi over Lyoto Machida. Close fight. Didn't think it was a split decision. It should have been 29-28 all around. But as soon as I heard that 30-27, I'm like, they got to give this to Gegard. It would be a travesty if any judge actually scored that for Machida 3 rounds to nothing. So we ended that event plus 0.61 units. I'll take the fucking W if I can. But overall, I think I was slightly down on the night, minus 1.67 units. It is whatever the fuck it is. All right. First up, we have Juan Archu. Oh, sorry. Fuck, what am I talking about? I'm just a little bit focused on what's going to be happening later on the show. So, let's start off with the first fight of the night. I already have 2 bets for this. I'm not going to get into the quick dots because we're going to go over that real quick. Throughout the card. But there will be some fights that I want to skim over, don't really give a fuck about, and I've had a very packed schedule the last 2 weeks, moving in and all that shit. So cut me some fucking slack. Some of these fights, if you guys want to hear about them, I would suggest my man MMA Predictions. The guy's a beast. MMA Predictions guru, I should say. He's a beast. Gets really deep into specific fights. And, I try to do as much as I can. But, some of these fights I just really don't have the time for. So, all right, Khalid Taha versus Bruno Silva. This fight was actually scheduled to happen in September. Not sure exactly why it got pushed back, but I'm taking Khalid here. Short a big quick knockout over Boston Salmon in his last fight. Got outgrinded by Nadia, but I think he's going to be able to impose his will on Bruno Silva, get the first round finish. Next up, Nadia Kassem versus Ji-Yoon Kim. We saw a huge swing in odds here. Ji-Yoon Kim went from plus 106 open, got up to plus 120, and now is a minus 172 favorite. Nadia Kassem is a fraud. I think that Ji-Yoon Kim wins this fight easily by decision. Not too much technical to get into there. If Kim gets to minus 200-ish, I would back off that play. However, I think Kim is decent enough in a parlay if you get her over like minus 150 or so. But if she somehow comes back down to minus 150, I would suggest playing her at that point. Will I? I'm not 100% sure. Probably won't. Next up, Megan Anderson versus Zarah. I keep fucking up her name. Zarah Fairn. Goddamn, I keep hitting the goddamn fucking. All right, let's get into this. Zarah Fairn dos Santos versus Megan Anderson. Why Megan Anderson is a minus 500 favorite, I have no fucking idea. She is a decent fighter. Obviously striking is her forte. We've seen in the past, if she can get grinded out, she's going to get ground out. Holly Holm, who's essentially a striker, goes out there and outgrinds Megan Anderson. After, Anderson landed a couple good shots on Holly Holm, so I think that's what is kind of exacerbating her. I don't even know if that's the word. I might be fucking making that up right now, but I think exaggerating. Exaggerating is the word that I'm looking for. I think Megan's striking is exaggerated due to the fact that she was able to land on Holly Holm and make her change her game plan in that fight. Yeah, I agree with that. But I think that she still makes technical mistakes. I'm interested to see how she's going to be dealing with the range management of Zarah here. You know, one thing that I found very impressive in Zarah's fights is she does hold distance quite well. You know, she might be at, you know, she has been bigger and more longer than her past opponents, so she might get into a little bit of trouble here with Megan Anderson. But I still think that, you know, she comes from a great gym, the MMA Factory in France, where, you know, Czech Congo, Francis Ngannou, and a lot of those French fighters made their emergence. That's where she currently trains. But, you know, she showed knockout power in her last fight against Isabel Badurik. You know, she looks like she could pose Megan Anderson some problems. You know, she might be able to technically outstrike her. I don't think she'll have the sauce on her hands. Like, again, she did finish her last opponents, but I don't know if she'll be able to get into a good enough range to be able to exchange with Megan Anderson hard enough without eating a shot back. And, you know, I will give it to Anderson. She does have heavy strikes. She definitely does have TKO ability, if you want to call it that. But I think that Zarah could come in with a very methodical game plan. Like, you know, she has shown it in the past. She uses her range well. She kicks when she needs to. She throws good combinations when her opponent does decide to close the range. So here it's going to be interesting to see how she deals with somebody who's just as big as her, if not as bigger than her. So there is in no world should Megan Anderson ever be minus 500 against anybody. I don't give a fuck who it is. With that said, I had to take a small shot at Zarah Fairn dos Santos. She's at plus 14 on Sportbet right now. I took a 0.25 unit stab on her. You know, you profit at least a unit there. I think it's worth the stab. The odds should not be this wide. Should not. If you are tailing anybody that even puts Megan Anderson into a fucking parlay with her above minus 450 even, you should be questioning that person's ethics almost. Let me just put it that way. All right. I'm going to take Zarah by decision, just because I bet on her as well. But I can definitely see an instance here where Zarah is not able to get her game going due to her not being able to adjust to the size of Megan Anderson, and she could definitely, you know, get outpowered. I think that if her chin holds up, she might be able to outpoint Megan Anderson and maybe just win on activity. But again, I don't know how much effect Megan Anderson's shots are really going to have on Zarah and what kind of fighter she becomes after she gets hit. So I'm okay with the 0.25 unit stab, 0.5 max unit stab at plus 400 odds to fade a fighter that, you know, doesn't really have the best fight IQ and isn't technically really the best fighter. She's just big. She's kind of a brute. And if she can't get her striking game going, you know, she's in some trouble. So you're talking about a girl who's in competitive fights against Charmaine Tweet and lost to Cindy Dandois. Fucking let that be your sign, all right? I'm taking Zarah by decision. That brings us to our next fight. Brad Riddell against Jamie Mullarkey, a guy from Australia, a guy from New Zealand, going head-to-head just like we have in the main event. Brad Riddell, very impressive footage from what you can see from what's out there, at least MMA related. On the tape index, I was only able to dig up 2 fights or MMA fights for this guy, but they were very impressive. The Kanan Song fight, he landed a huge body shot, which ended up crumpling Kanan Song, and he finished with a couple more shots. And then especially in the Shem Murdoch fight, beautiful knee, like perfectly placed. He has a knack for finishing people to the body, so I think that might be something to look out for in this fight. With Jamie Mullarkey, you're kind of getting an all-around guy. He has decent movement, a good decent fight IQ to know kind of when to take the fight to the ground and when to be changing levels. And I think overall I see more from Jamie Mullarkey. However, I just don't see enough from Brad Riddell to see how legitimate this guy actually is. You know, everything we've seen thus far, it's been pretty decent. However, you know, when you have so many question marks and you're going up with a guy that is as big of a favorite, where is it? Sorry, I just had it up here. One sec. Jamie Mullarkey is plus 130, Brad Riddell minus 150. So if that gets closer to like the pick'em range or something, or minus 120 each, I would entertain a bet on Brad Riddell. But up until that point, you know, I think Jamie Mullarkey has shown a better overall MMA game, but Riddell's striking, the difference in that alone might be enough for Brad Riddell to get this victory. So I'm going to take Riddell by TKO second round. I think he puts it on Mullarkey, who I believe will be going for takedowns more often than not. And then will take Brad Riddell by second round TKO. Maybe let's see another body shot, hopefully. But I'm taking Riddell to win. Maybe even Riddell inside the distance is something that you guys might want to take a peek at. It's plus 175 right now, so I might even take a small poke at that. But very impressive from what I've seen from Brad Riddell. And Jamie Mullarkey, still a young kid. I think he still has some developing to do. He has more fights than a Brad Riddell. However, I just think that Brad Riddell just shows so much more in his striking than Jamie Mullarkey shows in his entire game. So I'm taking Brad Riddell by second round TKO. Next up, we got Callan Potter versus Maki Pitolo. I'm going to take Maki Pitolo by decision. By second round finish. Submission to be exact. Not the highest on Callan Potter. I can definitely see why Maki Pitolo is such a heavy favorite. Minus 255-ish range. But UFC jitters are real. I've dabbled with it too much, especially with Askar Askarov a couple weeks ago. I got lucky with that draw, so I'm not going to take the shot on such a heavy favorite making his UFC debut. But yes, Callan Potter is that bad, so I wouldn't be mad actually at anybody that is taking a small parlay piece poke at Maki Pitolo. But straight, I just don't see enough justification to be betting a guy that heavy of a favorite making his UFC debut, no matter how bad Callan Potter actually is. All right, next up we have Jake Matthews versus Rostem Akman. I like Jake Matthews here. The kid always continues to show improvement. Just fought a better fighter last time around against Anthony Morocco Martin, who I'm going to continue to call Tony Martin. So that's the last time he's going to hear that full name. It's not going to do anything for your brand, bro. However many fights into the UFC for you, you can't just switch up your name and think that all of Italy is going to be behind me now because I fully put in the full Tony, which is Anthony, and added Rocco to it. So, sorry, Tony, but that's how it's going to go. But Jake Matthews, very impressed with him. He's been in the UFC since he was like 19 years old, which is ridiculous. He shows a great all-around game. He just gets beat by better grapplers and guys in that position. And I don't think Rostem Akman has that type of ability, nor does he have the type of cardio to keep up with a guy like Jake Matthews. So I like Matthews here by decision. I think that he grinds this fight out, takes a safe victory in his home country, and continues to move along and progress in his career. And unfortunately for Rostem Akman, he's probably going to get cut. Let's be honest. All right, next up we got Yorgan Castro versus Justin Tafa. Justin Tafa coming into this fight on a fucking rampage. His last two fights lasted a combined 58 seconds, where it went 2 rounds. His second last fight. I don't know why. I believe actually I know why. The fight that I have on the tape index only shows the second round, and it completely escaped my mind. However, Justin Tafa shows way better technical striking than my man Yorgan Castro. Castro is most famous for his being like the heaviest underdog on the card on his Dana White Contender Series fight. And he gets the victory and he gets his contract. However, I think he is still too green. A guy like Justin Tafa, who also has a brother who's a glory heavyweight kickboxer as well. You can just see the difference in the striking. De Castro is more of a brute. He's just trying to swing and try to do the most damage as possible and in hopes of knocking you out. Whereas Justin Tafa, yeah, he has the kind of same methodology. However, he's just tighter and crisper with his strikes. So with this fight being closer to a pick'em, it was kind of, if you're going to bet this fight at all, you got to go with Justin Tafa. And if there's another thing you're going to bet on, it's probably the under 1.5. So that is the lock of the night play that I was considering, that I was even talking about at the beginning of the show. So that line currently hasn't come out yet. And it's definitely something that I want to keep my eyes on as soon as it comes out. But I think that's pretty much the lock of the night. Like I said at the top of the show, I answered in last week's episode how, what odds would I feel most comfortable betting a heavy favorite in. The heavy on the under will probably be up to minus 350. I'm hoping it's going to be around the minus 300, even less than that range. But I am more than willing to play that juice on a guy like Justin Tafa and Yorgan De Castro. De Castro, though, man, he is still very green. And you see it in one of his fights against, I believe it was the fight that he had before the Contender Series. 2 fights before the Contender Series fight. Ras Halton. This guy was huge that he fought. And one thing that De Castro really recognized that he should do is whip the leg kicks. But it just seemed like so amateurish with how he was setting up the leg kicks, which was no setup at all. His setup for leg kicks were leg kicks. It was ridiculous. Like, he just kept throwing leg kicks. I've never seen a fight where somebody has thrown one strike so spam-like as my man Yorgan de Castro did against Ras Hilton. I would definitely recommend checking that out. That's on the tape index. And, it just seemed like he really broke Ras down like that and then eventually landed his overhand right. I just don't think that that's going to fly against a guy like Justin Tafa. I think Tafa has the fight IQ to know that, okay, if this guy's just going to keep whipping leg kicks at me, I'm going to throw the opposite hand overhand and land on this guy because he's going to have his hands down, which is something that, Yorgan is actually guilty of. So I like Tafa here. I do have a bet on him, 1.5 units. I believe it was minus 120 that I got, or minus 121. Seems like a no-brainer for me. It's two sloppy-ish heavyweights going in there. I believe one is less sloppy, and I definitely believe that this fight is definitely not going under 1.5 rounds, over 1.5 rounds. So I will be betting the under as soon as that shit comes out. Again, as long as it's not like minus 400 or something like that. But yes, I like Justin Tafa here. I think he's going to win by first round finish, and it's going to be a war while it lasts. Next up, we got Jumeau versus Dhiego Lima. I really like this fight. This is one fight where I was in the fade Jumeau or fade Dhiego Lima. I was in that mode for so long. Jumeau specifically because of the Shinsho Anzai loss. That was a fight that he should not have lost. Like, the judges got it right. Don't get me wrong. I'm just saying that I don't believe that this guy should have lost to a guy of the level of Shinsho Anzai. He has good striking. He does decently when he's moving backwards, but he does get have a tendency to get hit. His lack of activity is also a concern coming into this fight, as his last fight was against Daichi Abe way back in February of 2018. That was the same card that Luke Rockhold got knocked out by Yoel Romero. So with Jumeau, it's there's no biggie about it. He wants to keep this fight on the feet. He wants to remain in his striking range, but he does fall into poor fight IQ modes. For an example, when he fought Daichi Abe, he got outstruck in that first round. He got hurt a couple times. He took a lot of damage. He almost got finished. In the second round, he comes out. Yeah, he wins that round, but you can attribute this to two things. So Daichi Abe obviously showed a little bit of, aware in his treads. Like he was gassing, he was losing energy, he wasn't being as offensive minded as his first round. But you could also point that to him kind of unloading on Jumeau when he had him hurt a couple times. So maybe he blew himself out that way. The other way that he possibly could have blown himself for, and I am going to give bonus points to Luke Jumeau for this, is it's glass half full type of thinking here. He was blasting I believe it was left hook to the body, right hand on top, or it was the right hook to the body, left hook on top. But either way, he was just spamming that over and over. More than 10 times in 5 minutes, he threw that combination. And you're not going to get away with that against a guy like Dhiego Lima. Luke Jumeau pretty much ran away with the fight in the third round just based off of activity alone. I think Dhiego Lima is going to be a lot more active than Daichi Abe was in that third round. Proof? Dhiego Lima against Court McGee. That is a fight where I went lock of the night deep on Court McGee because I saw the deficiencies in Dhiego Lima's takedown defense in his past fights and just his ability to wilt. He came back in the Chad Laprise fight, got that beautiful knockout, and then comes out and masterfully, outshines Court McGee in that fight. I was surprised. I was very much surprised. He was very accurate with his striking, even though he was on his back foot for the entirety of that fight. And his takedown defense looked really on point. I think that Luke Jumeau, he is going to get hit here. He shows that he can get hit. I understand why Dhiego Lima is the favorite. But, even if he goes for a takedown, I believe that Dhiego Lima has a good enough takedown defense, and he showed it in his last fight against Court McGee, who I believe is a better wrestler than Luke Jumeau, that Dhiego Lima is able to keep this fight on the feet. And I think as long as it is on the feet, he's going to be the one outpointing Luke Jumeau, even though he might be the one on the back foot, because Luke Jumeau, in his own right, doesn't mind being on the back foot either. So the one interesting thing that's going to be fun to find out in the first 30 seconds or minute of this fight is who decides to take the back foot. And I think in either realm, Dhiego Lima is going to have the advantage here. I'm okay with his chin. I think he still has a good chin on him. He is going to be the longer fighter here too. So, one weapon that he's used and even knocked out Chad Laprise with is his left hook. Beautiful left hook, very accurate, can catch guys even when he's moving backwards. And he seems to be comfortable in either stance either, as well. So I think it's going to throw Luke Jumeau off a bit. If anybody's going to go for a takedown, it's Luke, and I don't think he's going to get it. And I think that Dhiego Lima could either outpoint him here. However, I think that he's going to go out there and finish him. I think that he has a decent shot at landing on Luke Jumeau, just as every opponent has in the past, and putting him out. Dominic Steele is probably the heaviest striker that's ever or landed on Luke Jumeau, but I think a guy with the technical ability of a Dhiego Lima on the feet, and to capitalize on some of the instances where Luke Jumeau is a little lazy with his defense, if he wants to spam that fucking left hook to the body, right hook on top, Dhiego Lima is going to see that. If he goes to, if Luke goes to any type of just pattern, which he's shown in other fights, I think Dhiego Lima is smart enough and has enough fight IQ to be able to catch those tendencies and capitalize on it against Luke Jumeau. So I can't believe I'm saying it, because I've loved to fade Dhiego Lima. I faded him against Jesse Taylor. I was super close to fading him against Yushin Okami. I'm not sure why I fucking laid off that, but I should have taken Yushin Okami there. And then I even thought Chad Laprise was going to beat him, but he showed that he is a very devastating striker. And in a fight where I don't think it's going to go to the ground, I'm going to favor Dhiego Lima here. However, I got to wait for the odds to get a little bit closer. It seems like there is some hometown love, or a lot of people think that Dhiego Lima is not the fighter that he is, and people are betting on Luke Jumeau. If I can get Dhiego Lima around the minus 130-ish range, minus 125, I may take a play on him. Maybe a 2-unit play, maybe a 1.5 unit play, but I think he should be favored here, but slightly. So I like Dhiego Lima. I think he gets the decision victory here. No, you know what? I think he does land on Luke Jumeau enough and get the finish. I'm going to say second round finish for Dhiego Lima, plus 320 for that prop for him to win inside the distance. So I might look at that, maybe put like 0.25 or something and 1.25 straight, but we'll see how that goes. But I like Dhiego Lima here, and I can't believe those words are actually coming out of my mouth. But yes, Dhiego Lima, second round TKO. All right, next up we got Tai Tuivasa versus Sergey Spivak. I like Tai Tuivasa here. I don't think that there is any doubt about it. I think everybody likes Tai Tuivasa here. Sergey Spivak is so easy to hit, as perfect pudding, perfect evidence in the pudding, whatever the fuck they call it, in Sergey's last fight against Walt Harris. I think we're going to kind of get the same type of thing from Tai Tuivasa. I think we're going to get a guy that is not really going to respect the power of Sergey Spivak. He's going to blitz forward, land the heavy shots, and eventually put out Sergey Spivak. I think Tai Tuivasa really has a lot that he wants to prove. He lost that decision he lost via finish to Junior Dos Santos back in December, and then he lost that decision to Blagoy Ivanov earlier this year. Good for him to get right back on the horse, and this is a very favorable matchup for him coming into his, home region, against a guy that just got finished in his last fight in May. Like Tai Tuivasa here, I would be absolutely stunned if this fight either makes it to a second round, or if Tai Tuivasa isn't the one that comes out with the victory here. I wouldn't be mad at anybody parlaying him at those heavy odds that he's at either. So I said not to put Macy Chiasson into a parlay last week, and what happened? A lot of people did, but a couple of my people didn't, and you're welcome. All right, next up we have Al Iaquinta versus Daniel Hooker. Very intriguing fight in terms of styles. However, I just don't give a fuck about it. Simple as that. Al Iaquinta is coming off a loss to Donald Cowboy Cerrone, and Daniel Hooker is coming off a victory over James Vick. So it's kind of a fight for Daniel Hooker to kind of get vaulted back into contention era after losing to Edson Barboza at the end of last year. Dan Hooker currently sitting around the minus 160-ish range. I don't feel confident enough to bet him there. He took so much damage in the Edson Barboza fight. Al Iaquinta is a gamer. I think Al Iaquinta has a better overall MMA game. However, I think Hooker just has the advantage on the feet. So I definitely think that he'll be able to, land on Al Iaquinta. I think he has the opportunity to decision Al Iaquinta, but I like Iaquinta's, tenacity to go through some of these shots. I'm gonna take Iaquinta by third round TKO. I like him here. Kind of talk myself into that one. I might run it a little bit more just to dig a little bit deeper, but Iaquinta, when he's on, he has really good boxing. We saw that in the Kevin Lee fight. When he gets into this rhythm, he could really do some damage on some guys. Daniel Hooker is a tough motherfucker. He took a beating, a significant beating to Edson Barboza. Eventually, stuck around, but couldn't get through halfway through the third round. Iaquinta is going to be a little bit more. And he's going to bring, that forward pressure to Daniel Hooker. It's going to be interesting to see if Daniel Hooker is going to be able to continue to, land while being on the back foot, because I truly believe he will be on the back foot. I'll think about a play on Iaquinta. This is something I'll get back to you guys later in the week. But I definitely like Daniel Hooker to, get a loss here. I don't feel comfortable betting him, nor would I feel comfortable putting him in a parlay. I like Iaquinta, man. He has a lot going against him, flying down from New York all the way to Australia, kind of coming into the neck of the woods for Dan Hooker. But, Iaquinta, he's good. Like, I don't think he really lets that stuff get to him. So I like him at dog odds. It's kind of like a dog or pass situation here. A lot of people are, like, kind of gaga over Daniel Hooker after he finished James Vick in his last fight. Very impressive performance, don't get me wrong. But Iaquinta is another beast. So I'm taking Iaquinta by third round TKO. Will I bet it? I'm not 100% sure. All right, next up, main event time. We got my man Robert Bobby Knuckles Whittaker against Israel Adesanya. This is a very, very intriguing fight. Almost anybody you put Robert Whittaker up against, it's going to be an intriguing fight. But you have Israel Adesanya as that other guy. We have a very intriguing fight. So Robert Whittaker is coming off of 2 fights against Yoel Romero. A lot of fights, both fights, a lot of people thought that he lost, more so the second one than the first one. But he, keeps getting by these fights by the chin on his hair, the hair on his chin, the chin on his hair, whatever the fuck it is. Hair on his chin, especially in that last fight, which was June of last year. He's been out with an injury for a while now. Kelvin Gastelum was scheduled to fight him back in February, had to pull out of that one. Adesanya pulls in, and then now we get Adesanya versus Whittaker to unify the titles. I really like Robert Whittaker here, but the only concerning thing is that he's been off for so long, and he's coming in against a guy that is a motherfucker in Israel Adesanya. He does a great job with holding the range. Kelvin Gastelum did a lot of good things by closing the distance, by blitzing on Israel Adesanya and catching him a couple times. I think that Robert Whittaker has a little bit more on his punches than Kelvin, but that could be argued. I wouldn't be mad if somebody said otherwise. However, I just think that the rust is going to be a sad reality for Robert Whittaker here, and it's not a guy you really want to come back against in an Israel Adesanya. He had roughly about 9 months off between the Romero fights, and we saw a difference there. I think even seeing a difference here against Adesanya is not what you want against a guy with the striking acumen of an Israel Adesanya. The guy has looked masterful. I don't think that Robert Whittaker will be very successful with any type of takedowns that he attempts on Israel Adesanya. I think that Adesanya is going to pick him apart on the feet. I think it will be competitive for maybe a round or two, but I think Adesanya is going to slowly run away with it as he starts to get the timing of Whittaker. I really like Adesanya. It's just, if we get like the Bobby Knuckles, I think it's going to be a lot tougher of a fight for Adesanya, because we've seen Robert Whittaker go 5 rounds if he must, especially against a tough opponent like Yoel Romero. This fight is just it's just going to be a pass for me. I can't help but think that we're going to get a really good Robert Whittaker. But if history has told us anything, that he doesn't do the best coming off of a long layoff. If you are going to bet this fight, and as closely lined as this fight is, I think you got to side with Adesanya, strictly due to activity, due to just being the more well-rounded striker as well. I think he has a lot of tools. His kicks are going to be very helpful for him here. But again, Robert Whittaker does a good job of closing distance, landing big shots, and we've seen that as a successful style against Israel. Even though Calvin didn't get that victory, we've seen that people can land on him. So I just think that Israel's just going to be a little too quick for Robert, and it's going to be that much. That will give him enough of an edge to pull out a decision victory over Whittaker here. I see that the fight go to a decision is actually the plus money here. I don't feel comfortable in that. It's very rarely do I feel comfortable in betting overs or fight goes to decisions. I don't know why I find it more nerve-wracking than an actual fight actually not going to a decision or the under or whatever the fuck it is. So very rarely will you guys ever see me bet the over or the fight goes to decision. But if it's set at like 1.5, it might be something that I'll be interested in. But anything over 2.5, I don't feel comfortable. Like Adesanya could land at any moment. Whittaker could land at any moment. I don't think that this fight will hit the ground. If it does, I think it's going to be Whittaker that's going to be the one going for the takedowns, but I don't know how successful he's actually going to be with those. So I don't know how you can confidently lay money on Robert Whittaker with all the injuries and all the time off that he's had and how good Adesanya has been looking, even in that war that he had against Kelvin Gastelum last time around. I just think it's just made him a better fighter, and I think that he has all the tools to dethrone Robert Whittaker and become the new middleweight champion. So it's a no bet for me, but I am going to side with Israel Adesanya. And I think he wins by decision. I think he outpoints Robert Whittaker here. That's about it. That's a wrap for UFC 243. Unfortunately, we lost Holly Holm against Raquel Pennington. I was definitely going to make Holly Holm my lock of the night play. So if they, eventually get that fight rebooked, I will still side with Holly Holm. I will still go probably lock of the night deep. And the best part about it is I saw a lot of people on Raquel Pennington, so I think that the line is going to be slightly better next time around. So that's just something to keep your eye on and to think about for the next time if they do rebook that fight. A lot of exciting things happening in the MMA Lock of the Night world. I'm super excited. I can't wait to showcase what I got planned for you guys. I got a lot of shit coming to the channel that's going to blow your minds, I hope. And you guys are going to get familiar with his face. So I can't wait to share that info with you guys, but you guys are going to have to wait. Until then, MMALOTN.ca. Check out my Twitter at MMALOTN. I already have 2 bets posted there, as well as my Bet MMA Tips fight. Yes, I was supposed to have a guest on this episode. However, things did not work out. I don't want to reveal who that is yet because I will be getting him on the next show. Maybe not the next episode, but a show in the future. And I can't wait to share who that guy is with you guys. So that's it for me. I will see you guys again next week. I don't even know which fight is next. UFC Tampa, which I believe is headlined by Ioana Jędrzejczyk. And yeah, Ioana Jędrzejczyk and Michelle Waterson. So I'll be happy to break down that fight for you guys. All right, that's it. I'm out. Later.